When we think of the Vietnam War, the mind instantly goes to the sky. The deafening thwack, thwack, thwack of Huey helicopters, the terrifying roar of phantom jets dropping napalm, the relentless, suffocating green of the jungle canopy. But for some soldiers, the most terrifying battlefield of the war wasn't in the sky, and it wasn't in the jungle. It was entirely invisible from the surface. Beneath the boots of American and Allied forces lay a sprawling subterranean nightmare. Hundreds of miles of hand-dug, heavily fortified, and aggressively defended labyrinths known as the Cu Chi tunnels. It was an underground fortress where the Viet Cong lived, plotted, healed their wounded, and launched devastating ambush attacks, seemingly vanishing back into the earth like ghosts. To neutralize this invisible threat, you couldn't use artillery. You couldn't use airstrikes. You had to send men down into the absolute dark. This is the story of a volunteer brotherhood who fought the most intimate, claustrophobic, and psychologically shattering war in modern military history. They were the men who looked into the abyss and crawled inside. They were the tunnel rats. The tunnel networks of Vietnam were a marvel of desperate engineering. Dug by hand using nothing but simple hose and woven baskets, the network in the Cu Chi district alone stretched for over 150 miles. These weren't simple caves. They were multi-leveled, sophisticated command centers. They had ventilation shafts disguised as termite mounds. They had water locks to prevent the American forces from flooding them with gas or water. They had tight U-bends designed to absorb the blast wave of a grenade thrown down a shaft. But above all, they were small. They were dug specifically for the slender frames of the Vietnamese fighters. A typical tunnel was rarely more than 3 feet tall and barely 2 feet wide. To move through them, you had to duck walk. Often you had to crawl on your stomach, dragging yourself through the stifling heat, the stagnant air, and the pitch-black dirt. When the U.S. military realized the extent of this underground network, they knew conventional tactics wouldn't work. Pumping the tunnels with tear gas only cleared the first few chambers. Dropping explosives only collapsed the entrances, which the Viet Cong would simply dig out again the next day. There was only one way to clear a tunnel. Someone had to go down there with a flashlight and a gun. There was no official military occupational specialty for a tunnel rat. You couldn't be drafted into it. You couldn't be ordered to do it. It was strictly a volunteer assignment. Commanders would stand before their platoons and ask for the men who were willing to crawl into the earth. It took a very specific breed of soldier to step forward. You had to be small in stature, often no taller than 5'5", just to physically fit into the holes. But more importantly, you had to possess an iron grip on your own sanity. You had to conquer the primal human fear of being buried alive. Their equipment was terrifyingly primitive. They wore no body armor. It was too bulky and would get them stuck. They rarely carried rifles. The barrels were too long to turn corners in the narrow dirt shafts. Gas masks impaired their vision and hearing, which were their only lifelines in the dark. Their standard kit consisted of a flashlight, a combat knife, and a pistol. Many tunnel rats abandoned the standard issue .45 caliber pistol. In the confined acoustic space of a dirt tunnel, firing a .45 was like setting off a grenade next to your ear. It would rupture your eardrums and leave you deaf, disoriented, and vulnerable. Instead, many opted for smaller personal revolvers sent from home, .38 specials or .22 calibers, because they were quieter and less prone to jamming in the ever-present dirt and mud. Armed with almost nothing, they would tie a comm wire around their ankle so their bodies could be pulled out if they were killed and slide head-first into the hole. Once inside, the darkness was absolute. It was a darkness so heavy you could feel it pressing against your eyes. The air was foul, thick with the smell of sweat, rotting vegetation, and cordite. The temperature hovered around 100 degrees Fahrenheit. The tunnel rat would inch forward, probing the dirt ahead of him with the tip of his bayonet. He wasn't just looking for the enemy. The The Viet Cong knew the Americans were sending men down, and they had turned their homes into death traps. The tunnels were rigged with an array of psychological and physical horrors. Tripwires were strung across the floor, attached to fragmentation grenades or artillery shells buried in the walls. Trap doors were rigged with punji sticks, sharpened bamboo spikes coated in feces to ensure severe infection if they pierced the skin. But the traps weren't just mechanical. The Viet Cong used the environment itself as a weapon. Tunnel rats frequently encountered booby-trapped wildlife. The Viet Cong would tie highly venomous bamboo vipers, snakes known by the Americans as two-step snakes, because if bitten, you supposedly only made it 2 steps before dropping, to bamboo roots hanging from the ceiling. When a tunnel rat crawled past, the snake would strike at face level. They encountered scorpions, fire ants, and swarms of bats, all waiting in the claustrophobic dark. Every inch gained was a roll of the dice. Every corner turned was a gamble with death. And then there was the enemy. Combat inside a tunnel was a nightmare of intimate brutality. There was no room for tactics, no room for cover. If a tunnel rat rounded a corner and came face to face with a Viet Cong guerrilla, survival came down to who could react faster. It was close quarters combat stripped down to its most raw and savage essence. Hand-to-hand combat in pitch blackness, fighting with knives, fists, and teeth in a space no larger than a coffin. If you fired your weapon, the muzzle flash would blind you in the dark, and the sound would leave your ears ringing, resetting your situational awareness to 0. In those agonizing seconds of sensory deprivation, you had no idea if you had hit your target or if another enemy was crawling through the dark toward you. The men who survived the tunnels rarely spoke of what they saw down there. The psychological toll of operating in that environment was staggering. It wasn't just the fear of death, it was the suffocating intimacy of the environment, the feeling of the earth pressing down on you. The Vietnam War is often defined by its massive scale, the carpet bombing, the vast jungle sweeps, the political turmoil. But the war won by the tunnel rats was measured in inches. It was fought alone, in the dark, armed with nothing but a flashlight and an unbelievable reservoir of human nerve. They were volunteers who agreed to descend into hell so that the men above ground could walk a little safer. It is a specific, agonizing brand of courage that belongs entirely to them. This was the Courage Vault. If you respect the sheer nerve of the men who fought the underground war, leave a like and hit subscribe. What historical moment of bravery should we pull from the vault next? Let us know in the comments below. Keep the vault open.